You're watching Mystery Unraveled. I'm Chrissy, your voice in the static. Tonight, we step into a block party that should have been nothing but ribs and laughter. But the street remembers. And when the street remembers, it calls you by name. The night was warm enough to make the air feel friendly. Grill smoke drifted like slow music. Kids hopped chalk squares sketched sloppy across the pavement. A little boy dragged a wagon that squeaked like it needed prayer. Folding tables lined the curb, legs splayed like skinny knees. Someone had draped string lights from porch to porch so the whole block wore a necklace of gold. Jean met me halfway down the street, red cup lifted in salute. Her bracelets clicked when she hugged me. She smelled like coconut oil and peppermint. Her grin made me feel 12 again. You got me? I got you. We moved through the crowd shoulder to shoulder, two fish in a bright stream. Lucy, queen of this event and all things righteous, stood planted at the grill station like a general at her post. She wielded a spatula like a conductor's baton and waved it at folks trying to sneak seconds before the first round. Plates first, then ribs. Don't test me tonight. This potato salad is sacred. Antoine's speakers were stacked in a proud little tower beside the sawhorse barricade that blocked the street. He worked the board with the easy grace of a man who loves his job. Every now and then he shot a grin toward the dancers like he was feeding them sunlight. The bass slid under our feet, cool and certain. A song clipped into another and the block cheered at the exact same second without planning it. That's how you know a neighborhood is real, it breathes together. For a while I just let it hold me. The laughter stitched me in. The food reminded me I hadn't eaten on purpose in 2 days, saving up for this. Names floated across the street the way a breeze carries somebody calling their cousin from a porch. It was ordinary. It was ours. Then a tremor in the weave. Marcus the grillmaster guarded a big blue cooler like it was his firstborn. You know the kind, chalky plastic lid, bungee cord, a little bottle opener screwed on the side because somebody's cousin is handy. He bent to flip the lid. His hand found air. Marcus blinked like he'd misread the world. His smile dimmed. Hey, y'all playing? He straightened, patted the empty spot, and patted again like maybe the cooler was shy. Who moved my cooler? We all glanced down as if a 7-gallon box could hide itself. Dry pavement. No sweat ring. No trail of melt. No scuff where it could have slid. Just space. Not even the ghost of it. Lucy pointed her spatula like the world's holiest finger. Marcus, don't you start no mess on my street. If this is for the internet, I will unplug the internet. Marcus shook his head, voice smaller. It was right here. Jean breathed a tired laugh, our neighborhood defense. Probably rolled down for the second grill. You know how we do. But deep in my chest, something leaned its ear to the ground. Not rolled. Not borrowed. Edited. Somebody had cut a piece out of the night and stitched it back together neat. A breeze rolled by, carrying a hint of rain from somewhere that couldn't reach us yet. The string lights swayed and threw little commas of shadow across the tables. A kid tripped, laughed, kept running. Antoine slid the crossfader and brought up a track with a sample everyone's aunt knows. Shoulders softened. Folks cheered and started the two-step that belongs to family reunions. The block settled back into itself like a body easing into a chair. Then the pitch glazed sideways. Not a skip. Not a scratch. A syrupy bend, as if the song remembered a different key and went looking for it. The beat thinned to a click. A hush drew around the speakers without getting the crowd's permission. "Aight, now," Antoine said under his breath, tweaking knobs, giving the board the look you give a child in church. "We not doing this." The hush lifted as something slid through the click. Not melody. Names. Avery. I stood very still. Jean. Lucy. Marcus. Thelma. It set us like a roll call from a room I couldn't see. A dozen whispers braided into one voice, none of them trying to be pretty. Folks turned their heads, not toward the speakers, toward the people named. Our bodies recognized the sound before our minds admitted it. Miss Thelma's fan slowed. She leaned forward in her lawn chair and stared into a place halfway between here and a memory. "That's my mama's stitch count," she said softly. She used to hum like that when she sewed at the table after supper. Antoine snapped the channel down. The whisper bled half a second longer than it should have, then hid like it had never been. "Bluetooth knew," he lied, loud enough to soothe. "We good, y'all." We were not, but we acted like we were. That's a skill. You learn it at baby showers and hospitals and in the moments after somebody says, "I'm fine," when they are not. I scanned the perimeter. That's when I saw him. A man at the edge of the light where the street lamp melted into night. Tall, suit jacket in summer like sweat didn't know his name. Gray at the temples, not dyed, not ashamed. His hands loose at his sides like he'd put down whatever he'd been carrying before he stepped into our world. He smiled with the soft pride of a deacon whose choir hit the note. He raised his palm to me. Not a wave. A knowing. Jean followed my gaze and let out a sound that was almost a laugh. "You know him?" "No." But I felt like he knew me. We walked together because that's how women cross thresholds in the dark. The man waited, polite, still, patient as good furniture. "Evening," he said. The word sat warm between us. "Beautiful night." "It is," I said, careful as carrying lit candles. "You from around here?" "Been around." He measured the block with his eyes, not to judge it, but to memorize it. "This street had sugar cane once. Then it had glass. Then it had children who ran from one porch to the other till the moths learned everybody's names." Jean's smile was social. "What should we call you?" "Earl," he said, like the syllable had waited on his tongue until we were ready. Pleased. "You come with somebody, Earl?" He didn't look past us to the crowd. He looked into us like he was reading the paragraph under the photo. "Baby, I came with everyone." He stepped forward. The party parted without knowing it was parting. Folks made room at their elbows, matched his smile, treated him like that cousin from the side nobody had seen since the funeral but always remembered when they told stories. He knew them back. He knew Lucy's Aunt Carol's recipe, mustard, not too much mayo, paprika only to make it pretty, not to taste. He called Marcus by a childhood nickname he'd left behind in a state far away. He told Antoine to check the left RCA like he was offering a kindness. He remembered Miss Thelma's first apartment number and the time she planted a lilac that never took but still made the soil smell like spring. Everywhere he went he fit. And everywhere I went I watched him fit. A little boy tugged at his mama's sleeve and pointed down the block. "Mama," he closer. "Who, baby?" "The man by the sign." We looked toward the stop sign where the circle of light fell off into dark. A figure stood just outside the brightness. Not moving. Not waving. The kind of shape your brain labels trash can if you want to keep your heart rate regular. I stared long enough to turn my eyes hot. When I glanced away and looked back again, the shape had stolen a step without lifting a foot. Earl didn't turn. Time folds on itself sometimes, he said conversationally, as if we'd asked about the weather. Makes pleats. Drag your fingers down the fabric the wrong way and you can feel every stitch. Who are you? I asked, and my voice came out steadier than it had a right to be. I'm from here, he said. And from the times when here tried to forget itself. The grill popped and flared like it wanted attention. Lucy snapped her wrist and tamed the flame. She made a loud joke about old men talking sweet and threw her laughter like a blanket over us all. I tried to let the blanket stay. I tried to eat my rib with both hands and say things about sauce thickness like a person who didn't feel watched by a street. The string lights blinked, once, twice, a small breath. When they steadied, the shadow near the sign had shifted closer. It hadn't walked. It had persuaded the space between us to be smaller. Jean slid her foot until her shoe touched mine. You got me? I got you. Antoine cued another track. His fingers were steady but the tendon in his jaw jumped. He glanced up at the left speaker as if checking whether it still belonged to him. The music started clean. It held for a verse and a half. Then the undernote again, the place where a song decides to go home in another key. The spare click. The whisper braiding through. It said more names. It said the dead like they were on a list to receive deliveries. It said a baby's name that nobody had said out loud since 1989 and all the ants turned their heads at once. It said a teacher's name and a boy with a beard now cried into his cup. Turn it off, Lucy said, but she wasn't talking to Antoine. She looked up at the string lights, at the old brick, at the evening itself. Please, now. Not tonight. The whisper faded because it wanted to, not because we asked it. The air felt like a hand had smoothed it the wrong way. I took my phone out because people do silly things in the face of systems larger than them. I took a picture of the far edge of the party, the place where light got tired. The image jolted as the phone hunted for a focus I couldn't name. When it landed, I saw two things and pretended they were one. The shadow was nearer than my eye had allowed, and Earl, in the middle distance, looked at the lens like a mirror. Midnight approached the way it always does in July, lazy, humid, inevitable. Somebody handed out sparklers. Kids squealed and etched their names in the dark with fire. Malik wrote Malik slow as a prayer and grinned like the Lord finally spelled him right. Someone's uncle swore he knew how to do the step he hadn't done since '96 and almost proved it. The countdown grew out of nothing. 10. 9. 8. Uncles remembered that they were loud. Aunties remembered that they were louder. Couples kissed like time wasn't looking. 7. 6. 5. I found Earl in the periphery. He stood very still with his eyes closed and his lips moving like a man who knows all the verses. 4. 3. Jean squeezed my hand so hard the bones argued. 2. 1. The fireworks burst over the alley. White washed the street and for a second the world lost its shadows. Then it was 2 a.m. No gasp, no scream, no cinematic fall. Just a neat little skip as if someone had pressed next. The street was the same and not. Plates sagged at the edges. Music in the speakers was memory only. Kids slept in unlikely arrangements. A breeze that hadn't been invited moved through and took nothing with it. We laughed because that's what you do when the curtain drops and you didn't know you were in a theater. Marcus said, "We must have had a time," and wrapped it in a grin like that would make it true. Phones came out like candles. Fingers swiped at screens, seeking proof. The proof was too loud. There were photos from the hours we did not live. Aunties caught mid-laugh, heads thrown back, the soft places above the heart glowing. Lucy crying on the curb with 3 women's hands on her shoulders, and no one could say why. Antoine kneeling by his speaker with his palm flat on the grill like it was a dog that could be soothed. Miss Thelma standing and dancing slow with no one, and if you looked right you could see why her face was wet. In half a dozen of them, at the edge of light that had gone thin, a man in a suit jacket watched like love. If you zoomed he got no clearer and no more false. He was present the way a name is present when you say it out loud into a room where someone longs to be counted. Lucy walked past me with a trash bag looped around her wrist and a paper towel tube like a scepter gone humble. Her mouth was tight and her eyes were gentle. "Did you see him, Earl?" I said. She didn't ask how I knew the name. "I think he came with my grandma," she said, and shook her head at herself. "Listen to me. I sound like those old church ladies. I'm sorry. When the song said the names, I heard her. And she sounded young. I haven't heard her young since I was 9. Jean sat on the curb and pressed her fingers to her eyelids. "You got me," she said, but it wasn't a question anymore. It was a way of counting, herself, me, the ground under us. "I got you." We found Miss Thelma's fan under a chair. It had a picture of a dove on one side and a funeral home number on the other. She took it like it was a holy thing. "They only come when we make enough noise to wake the part of the street that thinks we forgot it," she said. "Then they count us and we count them." She tapped the fan once on her knee. "You say the names so time don't put its hands where it doesn't belong." I looked for Earl. I found him not at all. He was either everywhere or nowhere, both felt true and neither hurt. We folded tables. The string lights gave a little as we unhooked them, tired of being pretty. Antoine wrapped cords soft and respectful like he was putting a child to bed. Marcus stacked chairs that had learned the weight of everybody's legs. Lucy walked the length of the street with her towel roll and a gaze that held each face as if to memorize it. She stopped when she reached me. "You going to write about this?" she asked. I thought of stories that make saints out of regular folks and monsters out of unkind rooms and decided I didn't want either. "I'm going to remember it," I said. Out loud. We stood a minute. The street lamp hummed. Somewhere a train threaded a long note through a part of the city that wasn't our business. The air felt less like it could crack. Malik tugged my sleeve. Was he mad? Who? The man at the sign. No, I said. I think he was pleased. Why? Because we said the names. He nodded like a person who already knew that and needed to hear it again. At home, my house made the noises it makes. The fridge remembered itself. The pipes told the kind of bedtime story only old houses say. I sat on the edge of the bed and scrolled the pictures. I didn't zoom on Earl this time. I let him be the size he wanted. One image made me put the phone down and pick it up and put it down again. It was Jean and me, both looking off camera in a way that suggested we were either ready to laugh or ready to run. The timestamp said 1:13 a.m., a minute I did not live. Behind us, reflected in a dark window, an arrangement of light and shadow that looked like four people slow dancing. One of them was a shape, one of them a guess, one of them an idea, and one of them my grandmother in the dress she wore in a photograph I have in a box that I haven't opened since moving here. I whispered goodnight into the room without thinking who I wanted to hear it. The air steadied like it had been waiting for permission. Morning wore glitter and damp like a hangover. Chalk letters ghosted the sidewalk, hopscotch squares with numbers missing like stairs you skip because they wobble. We gathered coffee and trash bags and stories and tried to decide which version we'd tell the people at work who don't live on our street. Marcus found a damp shape on the pavement near where his cooler had not been. It had dried in a heart with the bottom pulled long like a comma searching for its sentence. He stood in it and nodded to himself. Jean found a hairpin she hadn't worn since her sister's wedding and blinked 5 times fast and put it in her pocket. Antoine put a hand on the speaker in daylight and smiled. "We all right," he told it, and I realized he wasn't just talking to the equipment. Lucy took a deep breath and lifted her chin. "Roll call," she said, not loud, not for a show. Names broke soft over the street like wavelets. Kids and aunties and men whose voices rarely bend and the ones who live far away now, but once ran from porch to porch until the moths knew them, too. When we finished, the heat rose 1 degree and then settled. You want an ending that locks the door. I could tell you we found a note from Earl tucked in a crack in the curb, written in a hand that was everybody's uncle. I could tell you the cooler reappeared under a table full of greens and mac and cheese, and the ice inside had not melted an inch. I could tell you the shadow at the sign stepped into the light and was just a trick of angles, a trash bag caught on a twig. All of those would make sense. All of those would make the story safer to carry. Here is what happened. We counted. We were counted. The block remembered itself out loud, and time, like a good usher, stepped back so we could pass. That night we learned that you can throw a party so true it attracts your dead and you're almost forgotten and you're yet to be. A cooler can vanish because it does not belong to the part of the story you are telling. A song can bend toward the key it was born in. A stranger can walk through you like a prayer and leave you more here than you were when he arrived. If you ask for Earl, we'll say we don't know him. That will be true. If you ask whether he came to our party, we'll say not exactly. That will also be true. If you want to see him, come next year. Stand under the street lamp when the sparklers draw their slow names in the air. Listen when the whisper plates itself into the music. Answer when it says yours. Present. Here. You've been watching Mystery Unraveled. I'm Chrissy, your voice in the static. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious. And whatever you do, don't look away from the signal.